welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here. Whatever. And that's about it. Here, inside, and such. Yeah. So, strange week, like Friday or whatever day it was. I woke up with an incredible pain in the chest. And really bad, and but I didn't have any shortness of breath or dizziness, but just an horrendous pain. And of course you think, the thing right under there is your heart, and there's something wrong. And then I had this for 10 minutes. I sweated an insane amount for 10 minutes, and then it was over. The sweating part, but the pain was still there. So for about a half hour it was really an intense pain, and then for another half hour it was a less intense but horrible pain, and then for the next 4 hours it just slowly faded away. And at the time I took my blood pressure, and but I might have been a bit distracted because I got these incredibly low numbers. And so I don't know, I might have made a mistake somewhere, because it doesn't seem like I could feel okay, except for the horrible pain, and have those lower number. But anyway, and then later the numbers started getting more normal, so I'm sort of left not knowing what the hell it was, except frightening. Yeah, so I've added fear to the words. It is an interesting psychological mechanism, and it gets into a bit of philosophy and the difference between optimism and pessimism. So anyway, these little experiences. So context is, like 15 years ago I had a stroke, and brain heart attack. It wiped out my right side, and it was really, it's like this experience is the kind of thing that just, I mean, that can happen any old time. I'm just subject to this kind of crap by being here. It's sort of an unpleasant, I wouldn't even call it a reminder. It's just a statement. It just yells at you, you're at risk. Because it's obviously there's some thing that makes that a possibility you can't prevent, and mine is I might have a heart defect, that an unresolved heart murmur when I was a child and that kind of stuff, and so one of the valves might leak a little, and that's probably where little clots are getting into my aortal system, and so it might have just been a little clot. Heart attack or something, and it might have been a little clot stroke, but it's kind of annoying that you go 15 years between these things, or there's no, just be nice to know if that's what exactly is going on. So people get these symptoms from other things. The sweating is a little weird. That is sort of associated with heart attacks, but you can have indigestion of some kind, or gas, or reflux or something, but I don't seem to have too many of those issues, so it's hard to relate it to that. But anyway, so it just scares you, just puts you in a frame of mind that you have to, I guess, wait for it to wear off, and you'll get back to your normal, not paying any attention kind of phase, or not being paranoid. And I guess I should put paranoid over there, but it's not a good enough big picture kind of word. So it's very distracting. So I've been distracted by my being subjected to not just the idea of your mortality, like, oh, wait a minute, I could die quite suddenly, and this place is a mess. You're just like, oh, I really don't want to die and have somebody have to pick through my
could be a new
existence in some kind of. That really is annoying. I don't know exactly if somebody's, somebody does that on purpose or what that is. I mean, I don't know. nobody posts a comment for like decades, and it just seems when I make a video, they post a comment. I like the idea though that the reminder with a piece of sound. I really ought to make some software where people can do that, have a chat thing where you get a little notice when somebody's posted something relevant. But the problem is people don't really have much to say when they type. In my opinion, it's not very useful as philosophy. You can't really do philosophy in hunks of text, I don't think, very well. Really needs to be an interactive process in some respects, which this channel is failing at because there's I haven't found a suitable person for which argument or exchanging ideas is productive. But anyway, that's a separate subject. So there it is, fear. So it's I was thinking about fear and how controlling it is, and how I've lived most of my life controlled by fears, and I'm sure everybody has their own individual things they don't want to have happen in public, like pooing their pants or something, or some kind of thing they might fear. Everybody has their own vulnerable things, whether it be the dentist or needles or some specific kind of thing, some invasion that to them is worse than some other invasion or some other sensation. So everybody has sensations there, who cares, and other people are very sensitive to those things, and so we all have these little bit of different sensibilities, almost like food tastes. And I think fear is sort of like that. So some people have fears that are a lot more of an interference in the function of their life, and other people have fears where it doesn't get in the way too much, except maybe in their private life or in their interactions in personal relationships, because they have emotional fears and they can't emotionally connect, or they can't do certain things, they can't love, can't do some kind of bullshit. And I'm not saying I don't have some of those too, but I'm just saying I'm primarily my fears have always just sort of been related to these failure fears, that and not necessarily failures on my part, just failures of your functionality, just having some kind of like a seizure or something, or some kind of thing, like it's just, you don't want to be a pain in the ass. You don't want to make a scene, and and that's sort of silly stuff, like where you can rationally say, well, that shouldn't bother you any. Nothing you can do about that kind of stuff. It's part of being alive. It could happen to anybody, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, you just don't want it to be you that it happens to. And then you just start thinking about all the other things that happen to people. It's not their fault. And, it changes how you look at them, because you've seen them in this way that's not very flattering. And it, it sort of defines their image. And so that kind of stuff is, in a sense, rationally feared. It's a rational risk of your exposure is failures. And then there's this more overt one where you're fearing sensations and experiences. And your brain, my brain anyway, automatically can roll to these worst case scenarios, where just everything goes wrong, and you have one of those horrible experiences that you see happen to other people, where they get a little infection, and then they have to cut their foot off, and then they have to cut their legs off, and then they have to cut their abdomen off, and just some kind of just absolutely insanely horrible chain of events, and you're just like, I rationally don't want to do that. So I have a rational apprehension. But then statistically you say, oh yeah, well, it's only 1 in a million chance. but every single one of the ones you can imagine is a 1 in a million chance. So if you have 1,000,000 lottery tickets in 1,000,000 lotteries, you got a 50-50 chance of winning one of them. You're at 50-50 now, so and I've sort of brought that up in previous videos that were entered in all these lotteries. All these, it's only 1 in 438,000 people, and it's only 1 in, but we're entered in all of them. So you're going to win some of these things, and by winning, losing, of course. And so most of society, the Jordan Peterson types or whatever, would say, they don't pay any attention to that, it just gets in the way. And it's true as a pragmatic thing. If your objective is to walk the tightrope successfully, fear isn't going to help you any. I mean, it has absolutely nothing to do, except for maybe it might make you take it a little bit seriously. Just recognizing that, errors are really not a good idea, so don't have any of those. But in some way, it's going to interfere. Any amount of fear, or any amount of even taking it too seriously, will often degrade your performance. So the more comfortable you are just doing something, like you're not, it's like they sometimes with actors who were pretty bad, they would pretend they were just doing a test run and actually be filming, because when they didn't think the camera was on, they did it better than when they thought the camera was on. That kind of thing. And so that's all part of this psychology crap. And so I wouldn't disagree with the fact that there's real advantage in terms of your performance in not having a bunch of horror scenarios running through your brain and being completely distracted about not only occupying your neural brain, the brain that's supposed to be concentrating on what you're doing, with a bunch of imagined horror. That distraction alone is so negative. But the idea too that it just might force you to be too by the book. Instead of doing it naturally and comfortably, you're thinking too much about every movement, and therefore you can't make the movements anymore. I think it happens to musicians. They can't really think of. They have to turn into muscle memory, because if they're thinking about it too much, it hurts the flow. So, but there's probably other analogies or examples where that sort of demonstrate that you can't really think about what you're doing to do it well. You have to have it as a reflex. And see, those little things, it's a whole nother pile of psychology in terms of your brain learning to get rid of something it's doing, that it's a bad pattern, and just trying to correct for those bad patterns. It's such a strange process, because you don't get results connected to the work you do in terms of your practice. So the two things aren't really related to each other. But whatever. So another segue statement. Moving. Another. So when you start thinking about your speech will get more retarded than if you can naturally create a reflex where those things aren't in there, because you've had your brain has some subconscious reconstruction where those things are avoided, but they're avoided by this natural reflex. Okay, anyway. So the point is this gets to the question of an optimism bias or a pessimism bias, and it's sort of, in this case, you can see that the two things are not inverse. That really it's either you're ignoring danger or you're recognizing danger, and so they're not inversely. It's just a denial of the truth. And so what the optimism people are selling is some notion that there's nothing to fear but fear itself, when of course there is something to fear. I mean, it's a fact, and you can see it happen to other people. and so this has been another problem I've been having last year or so, is in my relationships with other people, because part of me finds the attachment to other people sort of annoying, because you start caring about them, and then something's going to happen to them, and it's going to be unpleasant, and it's just going to cause more grief. You're going to have more things to fear, because you'll have another example of what's waiting for you, and you have this this problem of something you care about is being harmed. And I had that with all these stupid cats that I've had to take care of over the years. It just started getting on my nerves, in the sense that I knew these were all fatal relationships. And you enjoy them, while everything's okay, and you can keep the fear away, and you can keep the thoughts of their mortality out of your head and all that stuff, and then everything's kind of nice. But it does show up eventually, and there's this horrible period where you have to do this, watching the degrade, or cat goes blind, these kind of things, and it's unpleasant to experience, and I'm not a very I'm a very selfish, introverted person, and it bothers me. So I would think that it would bother some people a lot more than me, but obviously a lot of people it bothers a lot less. And I've sort of used these examples before, because obviously there's an awful lot of people who enjoy watching horror films, and they enjoy watching 911 programs and cop shows and all that kind of stuff, because they somehow enjoy watching fail videos. They enjoy watching people fail, and somehow they feel themselves immune from that failure, because I'm going to fail in some different way. So as long as they're failing skateboarding, or they're failing in some way that, I'll never be in the food stamp office, so I don't have to worry about it, or I'll never be poor, or I'll never be homeless, or I'll never be some circumstance where failure is going to get to me. And that's just kind of stupid to think so, that you have immunity from running your own fail video. So it's difficult on a personal level, knowing people, in my opinion. I mean, even though it's nice to have people who care about you, or are interested in all that kind of stuff, it's somehow, for me, I can't really, I can't, people caring about me doesn't fix any of my problems. I mean, I can't use it to any advantage for my own, make me feel better kind of thing. It just doesn't work. I don't know how to make sense. It's just that it's my own opinion is the only opinion that matters, in a sense, and other people saying, it just doesn't do anything. So it's like I don't get much sense of security through other people's appreciation. I appreciate, I value their opinions, but I can't personally cash the value. That's all I'm saying. I can't emotionally do anything with it. And there's the downside of, again, where this becomes a more intimate example of, I'm going to have to accept something bad happening to this person I like, or I appreciate, or I respect, and I'm not going to want to watch that. I'm going to just do the I don't want to thing. So I have basically spent most of my life just doing that I don't want to, and I keep minimizing my risks, and minimizing my exposure, and I sort of live my life trying to squirm through evading as much potential failure as possible, in terms of the kind of things I was afraid of. I took a lot of physical risks, because some of these physical things, well, if you stick a machete in your leg now and then, it's no big deal. You can get over that. Some of the things that don't bother me too much versus the things that do. And like I said, that's for every individual. That's going to be a different balance of things that are going to terrify them or not bother them much at all. And so that's where there's some breakdown in the conversation, because people are measuring such different things as terrifying. So most people seem to be, in some respect or another, comfortable with the idea of a few hospitalizations, some surgeries, all that kind of stuff, where I'm saying, well, now even a half of one of those is a little too much for me. Unacceptable. Too high a price to pay for whatever I'm accomplishing or gaining from this life adventuring. It's just it's hard to say whether what people are doing is pretending it's not going to happen to them, or just ignoring it entirely and pretending life isn't your life isn't doomed to have some sort of black, dark, horrible pages in the book. The last few pages are going to be really messy and ugly and nasty, and maybe they're just ignoring that the facts that we know that's the price you're going to pay for your stupid life book. That the story just isn't going to be this wonderful adventure, and then you just, luckily a plane crashes into your house and you're dead in 0.7 milliseconds, and no harm, no foul. That's not really how the adventures go. Very few people get lucky and evade failure, and doses of it doled out in portions. Like even this idea of a good year versus a bad year. In some respects I had a good year, considering my back wasn't too bad. I did I'm healthier physically, feels a little more in shape, that kind of stuff. And but I mean, the year was just marked by my father dies, my mother dies, the cat dies, the other cat goes blind and dies, and it's just then I get kicked out of my house. It hasn't happened yet, but it's on the table as the next great adventure. And then this stupid little thing shows up, just to add another little piece of crap to say you're vulnerable as hell. And so the psychological bullshit would be this, ignore it, don't pay attention, you just endeavor to persevere, just blah, 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 walk around it, whatever you have to do. And I would argue that rationally my brain's doing the right thing to be honest. And the honesty is I should be terrified, I should be afraid, I should find this whole thing idiotic. What am I being subjected to this bad storytelling? Why am I allowing a bad storyteller to write my story? And the bad storyteller is the whole evolution process, the whole thing that puts us in this circumstance at this time in philosophical understanding. And that's a whole other context to this thing, is the perspective could have gone any way for humanity. Humanity could become more Buddhist, or it could have become more this or more that, but now it got dominated by these Christians and now the Muslims, and it's all this ideological crapola that has generated the memes and generated the popular cultures, and they could be so much more focused on something so much more important, and they could have very different priorities and very different things they celebrise. They could appreciate science more than celebrity and all that kind of stuff. They could value the doctor rather than the basketball player, all that kind of crap. just pitiful values. And in terms of perspective on what it is to be alive, it's evolution has been, as an idea, has been around for a couple hundred years, but it really hasn't sunk in, and it really hasn't rocked with most people in terms of understanding the implications of this mechanism and the carnage, that's just everyday carnage. I wonder if anybody's tried to calculate, just how many mammals die every day and how badly they do it. And, it's frightening. And just even a profile of the average person who dies every day. What's the backstory? How many years of fighting the disease, and how much degrade, and all the crap that goes with it. How much disability, how many years of this, and what traumas, and the average story isn't a great story, and yet we're supposed to believe, well, I'm not going to be average, I'm going to have the better story. And the psychologists, see, that's the point, is that we have psychologists who really aren't being honest in any way. They're not scientists. They're not trying to do what they're not trying to define what proper logic is, or what sensible fears are. They're just trying to make you into a machine that succeeds, that keeps functioning, that keeps washing dishes and doing the chores and behaves properly. And that's their only motivation. So of course any of this thinking about bigger pictures and context, and that you're not, that you are going to live this less than brilliant story, no, they're going to just keep saying no, just keep pretending, don't think about it, ignore it, or just overtly pretend you're going to be lucky. And they just keep selling that crap as the truth, and it's not the truth. But clearly the whole culture is built out of that, and so they certainly create enough pressure to force most people to say, oh, I have to do that, I can't be controlled by my fear, even though the fear is perfectly rational, even though it's perfectly sensible to be afraid, to be very afraid. We do live in a kind of Jurassic Park, and if you're rational about your odds and about your abilities and about your power to control, you're going to recognize that you don't have any control. Very very few things you can do. You can wear proper footwear, and you can use antiseptic on your little cuts, and you can do certain things to try to prevent having your arms cut off. But for most of it, you don't have a whole lot of control about the things that are going to come and bite the fuck out of you. The dog that's going to come to get you, you're not going to see it. You're not going to be able to push it off with some kind of stick. And that should be obnoxious, rationally. Why should something vulnerable pretend those dogs aren't coming for it? And just pretend that's not the game they're really playing. They think they're playing some other game, but the game really is feed the dog. Okay? You're just wolf food. That's the evolution game. You're just, like the fish who spawn and then drop dead. So, at high tide. So, the young little hatchlings can eat the corpses, the decomposed corpses. The salmon do that. Certain species of salmon do the same thing. Oh, brilliant, right? Just, that's just, what a great game they're playing. But we're in the same game, and the propaganda is don't pay any attention to the growling and snarling wolves. And that's just a lie. But to be pragmatic, if I'm going to hang around and make videos and I'm going to do this and I'm going to live, yeah, the only way you can really do it is you can't be thinking about that crap, because you'll just fail at doing your life. Your life will be impossible to live because you're just going to be sitting there, terrorized by the prospect. So you have to come up with some sort of, reasoning mush, some sort of gibberish of word game to pretend, to make the spoon go away. There's no spoon. There's no wolves. There's no problem. And even though there's a problem, and it's not going to go away, and you're going to degrade and die, but we'll call that a golden year, kind of thing, and the image of some of that is true. I mean, some people do have very nice retirements, mostly, but it's, most don't. Most have all kinds of drama and horror. And, they have to watch their partner die and stuff like that, and they have to watch the dogs eat them, and they have to have the images in their head for the rest of their lives, and carry around very sad memories. And again, the psychologists would say, "Oh, just don't do that. Just remember the good stuff. Just remember the pretty, Hollywood photograph, not the real person. Just remember the photograph." And somehow that's being honest, or that's living a real life, or that's being genuine in some way by denying what our brain is doing rationally, which is recognizing the dilemma we're in. Again, the only reason why animals play is because they can't do what we're doing. They can't think about it. They can't imagine the whole story. They can't see themselves running through a maze. They can only see the part of the maze they're in, and that's as far as it could ever go for them. So they can never see the wolves coming for them. They can't see what there is to fear. So they can't be afraid. In the same way we can. They can't manifest. Their logical brain can't do the logic for them because they don't have enough information to see what we see. But we can see it. We can understand when the lion eats the gazelle or something, chases it down, terrorizes it first, and then torments it by circling it and doing all this stuff and making them all panicked and nervous and doing all the other crap, and then finally running them down and brutally ripping their hide off. We can understand there's a trauma there. There's pain and suffering, and it's sad. So we can be sad. They can't. So they have an immunity to this negative function, you could call it. But this negative function is completely honest. It's completely genuine. It's really the truth. That's what we're living, is this life of horrendous vulnerability, where every day when we go to pick our day out of the, where there's all kinds of skull and crossbony, poisonous, bad apple shit in that hat that you're going to be pulling out, as your fortune. And, so the fundamental argument is, if you have any kind of sense of honesty, okay, admit that, all right, I can't play the game thinking about what's in the hat. I can't personally do that. But at least admit that you understand that that's what you're doing, though. You're denying the real game, which is you're reaching your hand in, and there's snap traps in there, and they're going to, bloody you up, kill you, torture you. Okay, you can't play life that way by thinking of it that way. You got to stay in the boundary of the maze, and you can't be doing this I'm not going to be looking for wolves all the time. That's just so destructive to my life. I can appreciate that. I can understand that. I can say, sure, you're doing it right. If you want to be able to walk tight ropes, it's really good to not think about the fact that you could ever fall off. Think that you have magnet feet and that you're immune to falling off. Great. Fantastic. For you. Because you're here walking tight ropes. But why the fuck would you impose it on somebody new? Why would you take somebody and put them on that tightrope when you know the only way they're going to be able to do it is to deny the reality, is to pretend, is to create a fake life to live, a dishonest life, where fear isn't an issue, where you're not going to recognize your real vulnerability. Why would you do that to somebody? I mean, why would you think you have a right to be that cruel? That stupid, when you know what the truth is. You're just putting them on the tightrope to be wolf food. You know that's how it's going to end. That's what the books write. That's where most people end up, wolf food. So just be honest that this idea of supporting this idea of keep making more people so you can subject them to more horror and torture is insanely cruel. It's Mengele. It's a Nazi war crime. It's a crime against decency to be pro-life, because pro-life is pro-dog food. It's just saying I want to make something into vulnerable, and I want to, by all probability, feed it to the dogs. Let the dogs tear it to pieces. Why would you do that? I mean, and why would you be dishonest enough to say that's not exactly what you're doing? Again, live your fake life. Be happy. Don't worry. Be happy. But don't pretend that you've changed reality. Don't pretend that you've now created a great game. Because you're not playing the real game. You're playing a fake game. You're pretending the tightrope is a giant piece of glass, and you're just going to walk across the glass and just try to stay on the line. And you're just living a fake, false, phony existence. And just admit that. Admit that works for you. But there'd be no rational reason to say, I'm going to make somebody retarded. It's like having a kid who's mentally retarded on purpose. It's like thinking, I'll make somebody who can't appreciate what value is, can't understand, just so they can be stupid enough to walk back and forth across the tightrope. Why would you do that? And that's explicitly what they're doing with your fake religions and your fake optimism and your fake singularities and your fake notions of humanity going somewhere or doing something. I mean, it's so obvious idiocracy. It's so obvious that we're spiraling down, not spiraling up. That this is going nowhere good. Where do these people come from that keep doing this? And they keep doing it, like, even though themselves, they're not having kids, they're not doing, but they're sitting there selling the idea. And they've had kids and even run into the problem of their kids ends up crippled or diseased or fucked up or something else, and they're still selling this crap to other people, like, yeah, you should do it. And in a sense, I think they're only doing it because they failed and they want more people to fail so they don't feel bad about failing. So failure becomes routine. Somehow it's acceptable. If everybody else is doing it, then what I did wasn't wrong. So if I can make sure everybody else keeps doing it, then nobody can ever point a finger at me and say I was guilty of something. Is that all they're doing? I mean, is their intelligence so weak and meager that's all that they see here? Is I just have to cover up my crime by making more criminals? So I'm just going to promote this stupid notion or this stupid idea for no better reason than to cover up the fact that I was stupid. I'll make everybody else dumb because I got a bad grade on the test. I'll pour lead into their drinking water. To make sure that my bad test results don't look so bad because I made theirs worse. I mean, it's just time for anybody with any intelligence to recognize that there's absolutely no justification, no ethical, decent notion that can be contrived to say it's okay to, for no good reason, subject a feeling creature to play a bad tightrope game. And it's a bad game. There's no winning this stupid game. The game is just made out of get hungry enough, that is, get desperate enough to run across the tightrope to get a hamburger, and then to run the other way to get a Tums, and then to, run the other way to get to the bathroom, and then run, you're just running back and forth across this thing based on these impulses, and this incessant deprivation, that seeps into you, where I need. Why would you deliberately do that to something? Deliberately force it to humiliate itself, essentially, chasing all of this crap. I mean, you've got like 80-year-old people going to plastic surgeons and shit. You would create somebody who's so psychologically fucked up that they think it's, it's worth bothering. All of the stupid, silly people, all this stupid, silly crap you see, that's the book being written by people. Why would you suggest somebody write those books again and again and again and again and again and again? Why would you defend that? I mean, how do you defend that? And have any kind of sense that you're being honest or honorable or in any way respectful of the truth? And that's what it comes down to. So, summing up, I mean, I could say that yes, pragmatically, to get through your life, denial is a good idea. Ignoring things is a good idea. But if you're going to do anything called philosophy, or if you're going to do anything called give advice, or if you're going to do anything called voting or influencing, you can't do that, from your delusional perspective. You have to say, okay, I do know the truth now, and I will apply the truth now, and recognize that, my delusion isn't reality. My delusion is how I get through my day. My little daydreams, or my little hopes and wishes, and my little imagined scenarios. Yeah, that's how I get through my day. But that isn't real. That's not how the real world is going to treat somebody. And it's not how the real world works. And it's not how the real world apportions disaster. It has nothing to do with the truth of this vulnerability we're living in. And that you can't make feeling things immune to. And again, I haven't even gotten into the fact that all this stuff I'm talking about is all such a tiny portion of the drama that takes place on planet Earth. The little dramas that happen in the little personal brains of human beings is a tiny percentage of the psychological drama taking place on planet Earth. And the fact that, 99% is probably the truth, 98%, 97%, some kind of huge percentage of the human race doesn't even touch that truth, doesn't even have a notion that that truth exists, that they're not the center of the universe, that the universe is huge, and that most of the universe is living in worse than poverty. Most of the universe is living in, intellectual deprivation, physical deprivation, psychological deprivation. Brutal. Just absolutely brutal. And because all they can see out their window is the Disney castle, they just pretend the slums don't exist. And for intelligent people to be uncomfortable with that being the truth of the world we live in, I mean, this should be really bothering anyone with any kind of intelligence, that most people are so disconnected from reality, from what's really at stake. And they can't do it in their own lives, in their human interactions. They can't even recognize what's actually happening, which is everything you care about is going to be subjected to this. They're going to be fed to the dogs right in front of you. So if you don't get fed first, you're going to have to watch the others get fed. And aren't those lousy choices? Gain immunity by getting eaten first, or have to watch it and then have it happen to you. Great choices. No, those are horrible choices. And again, I don't want to, because you're talking to human beings, it always ends up being this human conversation, but we're such a tiny part of the drama. The maze game has so much. It's so much wider and bigger than the little world we play in. And it's dauntingly horrific to recognize how far humans are from being human, decent, meagerly intelligent, meagerly reasonable, reasonably honest to the truth, or respected. Their brains have so few truth elements in them, so few of the truth elements, so few of those words understood, so little of that exists in people's brains. It's dismal as a fact. Yeah. So anyway, that's enough of a video, I think. So I'm doing the pragmatic thing, figuring out how to pretend Friday didn't happen. Just go about my business as if it never happened. Fade it into the past and pretend. And because I have to. There's no other way to stomach existing. If you can't carry life, your reality every day. It's just too heavy. You have to lighten the load to be able to do anything with your life. And I guess I'm just saying that everybody should be able to sense that they're doing that. That they have constructed a fake, lighter world to live in. And that any time they're going to have a conversation about what it is to be alive, they have to be honest and say, yeah, I'm cheating. I'm not really carrying the real burden. So no. Let's not pretend that the real game is crushing and that we're just playing a fake tightrope game. We're not paying any attention to the reality. And because we've sort of been able to construct it into some sort of virtual game, where you can die and it doesn't matter, you just hit the reset button. You can, anything can happen. Oh, I ran out of, health points, so just buy some more, or whatever. You can't bargain with the reality. We don't have the control you have in a video game. So let's not pretend this is anything but a stupid game that through just plain lies and fakery we've pretended makes sense, and it doesn't have any sensible elements at all. And that's the truth, and people ought to say it. And these optimists, these frigging sellers of sugar, like Piro, you know, or just quit talking shit, quit propagandizing, quit selling, you know, this bad product. You know, you're hawking dioxin. You know, you're a cheap carnival barking salesman selling crap. The same to you religious kooks and the rest of it, you silly optimists. Grow some integrity and recognize that, yeah, you're just living a fake life and a silly, contrived pile of bullshit existence, and the real game has no value, no positive value. It just crush, kill, and destroy in the end, and for nothing. To feed a hunger that never should have existed, to satisfy a need, to cross an idiotic tightrope to nowhere. Tightrope to nowhere. That's all we're doing. So anyway, okay, that should be enough now. I'll have to do. Yeah, that's what I'll say. So yeah, I do intend to make more videos and to do something perhaps interesting. Well, I don't know if I do intend to do that actually. Yeah, it's just trying to find a mechanism. You know, storytelling. Again, we'll go back to movies and all this other stuff. You have to do you have to put this stuff in a form that is less direct and personal. I think for it to work, you have to, you have to have it sink into people indirectly with metaphors and analogies. Just if you say it directly, they reflexively see what's coming, and they don't hear it, they don't absorb it, they don't engage in it, they run away. So they go to the donut shop when you're selling them vegetables. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's all there is. Yeah, that was a huge distraction. And yeah, I have to, sort of said it all. Point is to construct it into something that people will listen to, because they won't listen to this. So it has to be in some other form, and got to work on that. They're too focused on the messenger kind of thing, Messages have to be disguised. They have to be in envelopes that don't look like bills, that kind of thing. Yeah, so just a sad fact of life. You have to disguise everything in a package. Another, it's not sad, just irritating fact of life. That none of it is dealt with in any kind of straightforward way. So it's all crooked lines everywhere. Yeah, that should be enough now. I'm just not hitting the button for some dopey reason. So, should have hit it already. So I guess I'll wait. We're almost at 55 minutes. So no point in waiting. Alright, so till next time. And